Apologies, everybody. Can you see and hear me now? Brilliant. Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry about that. It went absolutely perfectly in rehearsal. Let's say no more about it, and I will carry on. So thank you for bearing with me while I sorted that out. Happy Christmas to everybody. We're almost there. I get to do the Close to Christmas talk. I'm not going to read you the night before Christmas. I'm very sorry about that. Instead, I'm going to talk to you about the placement offer that we've been running at Hengistbury Head Nature Reserve in Bournemouth, Dorset. Obviously, I can see the comments bar as we go along. If you want to ask any questions, I'll either find time to answer them during the presentation, or I can answer them at the end. So let's see how it goes. So, if you can all see the screen behind me, hopefully, I will run you through what is on it. So, just about me. My name is Brian Heppenstall. I'm Senior Ranger of Hengistbury Head Nature Reserve in Bournemouth, Dorset. It's a 164 hectare nature reserve with 1 million people on it, although that was 10 years ago, the 1 million people estimate. I suspect it's probably a lot more than that now, and the COVID summer has probably almost doubled that for this year, I would have thought. I've been manager there for 11 years now, 11 years in January, so not quite. And I've had various roles before, working for the Amphibian and Reptile Conservation Trust, and also managing urban parks with the idea of trying to get more biodiversity in them and increase community engagement as well. So dealing with things like traveller incursions, dog fouling issues, prostitution and drug taking. So very varied history. I went to land-based college for 3 years and university for 3 years, and the Hengistbury Head where I work now is where I was on placement. So that kind of helps set the background for the placement scheme that we've developed, really. One of the reasons that I think I've been asked to do this talk is we have a placement offer at Hengistbury Head that is now been rated as 31st in the UK under the Rate My Placement Top 100 Graduate Employers. We came higher than the likes of British Airways, Deutsche Bank, Tesco, and that was a really big deal for us. It was an offer that's been growing for a while, and it was the students that voted for it as well. And so, bearing in mind, I run a team of three rangers, beating or finishing higher than those companies in their entirety was a really big deal, and I think it shows the quality that we've developed there. So I'm going to try and talk you through how that's developed today, and it really did develop by accident as well, so please don't think it was a purposeful thing. I'm also a qualified careers advisor, took my degree in that a couple of years ago now to try and help people in the sector. And I was Bournemouth University Alumni of the Year in 2018 for trying to help young people develop their careers too, so there we go. So, getting in the way of some of the titles. So what do we expect from today's conservation workforce? Well, we expect quite a lot. To start with, we want qualifications, and that can often range from vocational qualifications at around level 2 up to degree level, and this is for entry level jobs. So it varies widely, probably a lot more widely than perhaps jobs in other sectors would do at entry level. We want experience. Interestingly enough, there was a survey of 55 environmental sector organisations carried out by the North Yorkshire Wildlife Trust within the last few months. And one of the findings was that there was often no experience asked for on entry-level jobs. But I'm not entirely sure that is the case. There's entry-level jobs on Countryside Job Service that can be found today that either ask for experience or significant experience. Do we want training and certification? So alongside talk qualifications from further and higher education, we can ask for things like chainsaw licenses, first aid certificates, use of tractor, trailer, pesticides. And nowadays it's more common to see things like communication skills asked for within job descriptions and person specifications too. So a job on Countryside Job Service today asks for significant experience within the public engagement sector. It's something that's growing. I guess as our roles develop even more to be ones that involve communication, as we understand why communication with people is really important across all the different tools that are available to us now. So that's quite a lot that we want from people, especially when few of our degrees in our sector or college courses are geared towards offering this kind of thing. Or some of the land-based colleges obviously do offer certifications to go alongside it, as do places like Royal Agricultural College and Harper Adams too. So there are opportunities for young people to get those qualifications at an entry level, or career changers too. So how do we get those aspects to our careers before we start in a paid role? Well, it's tricky. It's always been the circle, isn't it? You've got to have a job to get experience, and you've got to have experience to get a job. So the ways that we often find people moving into is through either work placements, which is what I'm talking to you about today, through volunteering, which is probably more of a common route for people to go through, or for internships as well. And there are some paid options around internships now. Some of those aren't paid, but some of those are. So that's something that you're seeing crop up a little bit more. So I just kind of, not a question, because obviously it's very tricky when your audience is virtual, but it's just to think about the conservation sector and which of those we offer. Because I guess mostly the one that we do offer is volunteering. Internships are still rare, but how many people offer work placements? So on to work placements themselves. There's a really great TED talk on the work experience and work in particular, in the performance zone and the learning zone. And it's something that I think is really fascinating about how we move from one to the other. And I've got a good example coming up. In fact, I've got a couple of good examples for sports and music fans. But structured learning opportunities provide the benefit of being able to offer both the performance zone and the learning zone. And again, I'll build on what those are in a minute, but professionally doing our work over and over again doesn't necessarily make us better at our work. It's why we go on things like chainsaw refresher courses, so that we can learn from somebody better than us. Perhaps the new cuts, the new safety techniques, the new sharpening tools that are out there. And when we're learning first aid, we don't just hand somebody a first aid kit and let them go to work on somebody, and afterwards we tell them they did a good job and the right thing. We send them to somewhere to learn. So that's the learning zone, and the performance zone then comes after we've learned how to do it, and we're unleashed on the world to bandage them or to chainsaw trees down, which hopefully don't come in the same moment. Through our work placement, we do offer a really good, there's a really clear example of where we offer that. So in the first week of our work placement, we do in-house brush cutting training. Now, I know that's something that possibly not every workplace will allow because of insurance reasons, but our workplace do allow us to train placements to use a brush cutter, to have them learn how to use it, learn how to maintain it, and then they set to work throughout some of their remaining weeks with us to use it. So you've got the learning zone where they're taught to use it, and the performance zone where they then get to test that out. And here's a great example. This isn't a picture of me, it's a picture of England rugby star Owen Farrell, who's recently been banned for a horror tackle, which is where the comparison to our industry hopefully doesn't compare. But he's a good metaphor for the learning zone and the performance zone. So he doesn't just play rugby every day to get better at rugby. He goes training, he does fitness, and he works with other star players like Johnny Wilkinson to improve on particular aspects. And with his horror tackle that he carried out and got banned for, he's now practicing tackling training to not do that again. But then obviously at the end of the week he moves into the performance zone where he then plays a game of rugby. So well, there we go. We have team training skills, fitness, experienced trainers like Johnny Wilkinson, and tackle technicians. So hopefully you won't get banned again. I'll read some of these out because I know they're a bit small on this screen. For another example, for those who aren't so keen on rugby, Beyonce apparently after every gig she does spends 2 hours taking notes down so she can tell her backing dancers, lighting technicians and acoustic engineers on improvements they could make for next time. So they say that that's what makes Beyonce one of the best performers in the world. Not just necessarily her singing, but her eye for detail and the fact that she learns how to improve on it. And I'm sorry for those just tuning in and wondering why I'm talking about Beyonce. Hopefully you can go back, there was a reason for it. So the benefits, let's start with the benefits to work placements themselves, to the students. So there are clear benefits to them. We get to exchange our knowledge and practice to them. Bearing in mind they've often been learning academic or theoretical practice in lecture theatres. They get a chance to develop their soft skills. This is something that's not really done enough at university and college, and it is improving, highlighting the importance in them. And it's something that gets brought up in surveys from all sectors, including ours, quite a lot. Things like communication skills, presentations, just being able to show enthusiasm and writing skills. They get the chance to test what they've learned at university, which can be great for us as professionals as well, because I mean, certainly for me, it's over 20 years since I've been at university now, and obviously they are exposed to some new theories coming through, things like ecosystem services that we get to hear about from the students, which is great. They get the chance to build networks with us, so they meet other professionals, and I'll explain more about the types of professionals they may meet during a placement, but that's a really good start for them, building networks, because it means they can go to people and ask questions or even get careers advice, or even when they're interviewing that they've met perhaps some of those interviewers already. That they get the chance to define their career choices, and this is a really interesting one, because I don't want to paint a rosy picture that every work placement that comes to us has an amazing time and goes off to be a countryside ranger, because they often don't. A lot of them will stay in the environmental sector, but some of them will find out that the backbreaking brush cutting work isn't for them. Some of them will come into it thinking that data analysis is what they want to do, but find out that public engagement is actually something that they've never tried out before and they're really passionate about it. That's a really healthy thing for a graduate to have a much clearer understanding of where they want to go, and it's great for us as employers as well to know that that person has road tested effectively a small part of that career and understands that it's something they want to put their heart and soul into. A good work placement offer can aid inclusion as well, and I'll come back to that later. And obviously a good work placement can help you sing like Beyonce or play rugby like Owen Farrell, metaphorically. But just on that, just on work placements and the fact of how valuable they are, the UK Commission for Employment and Skills interviewed 90,000 employers in 2014, and they found that 74% of them state that experience is critical for the people that they're employing. They want to have some sense of the fact that they understand that the work they're going into. But only around 27% of employers across all sectors actually take work experience and work placements on, which is a big difference. So 74% of employers expect experience, 27% of employers offer it. So I think there's hopefully room to grow that. There's a really good guide if you wanted to read more about work experience and how you can maybe, if you're having trouble selling the idea to companies or organisations, it's called Not Just Making Tea, Reinventing Work Experience. So that's a good one. It's by the Government Commission for Employment and Skills. So there is obviously an ugly side to work placements, and some of that is unintentional. And to be honest, our work placement offer started ugly and has hopefully turned beautiful. And there's three categories I've broken this up into. So uninspiring will be the first one. So that's where you have students making tea and doing endless photocopying. Don't get me wrong, there are parts of our job that require it, and sometimes that can be compared to things like litter picking. And there's nothing wrong with exposing placements and future professionals to those kind of things as aspects of the job. But when that does kind of go amiss is when we have them do it all the time, because then it feels like we just have them there to do the jobs that we don't want them to. So we make sure at Hengistbury Head that we bring them all through to do every aspect of the role, and if they're good enough to do some of the survey skills and they've gone to a degree where it can really benefit them to do more, and there's litter picking to be done, then the staff will often do the litter picking while the students will learn and carry out the field skills. There's unplanned work placements, and this is what we were guilty of. The first couple of years at Hengistbury, we had students approach us and ask us to come and do work placements with us, and we just accepted them. We didn't sit them down for an interview, we didn't ask them what they wanted to do, we didn't plan for them to be there. And often it turned out to be something that wasn't really enjoyed by staff or placements alike, because we often found that we were running to catch up to offer people something while they were there, when often we just kind of felt that we wanted to get along with our job because we hadn't structured it well enough. So it should be purposeful. And the third one would be the bad fit, and this is where the interview can come in, and this is something that we do now. So if you have a limited amount of places, and obviously most places will have limited places because you can be small or massive, but you still will have a cap on how many opportunities you can offer, is that you do make sure that the people that are filling those roles are the right ones for you, and you're the right one for them, because we have had bad fits. We continue to get bad fits every now and then, although they're getting less and less. And obviously it's not a great experience for anybody really, and it's a wasted opportunity because you're letting that space go to someone who perhaps hasn't made the most of it when somebody else may have done, who have been turned down. And obviously it's your time that's going into it as well. So we find that improving that bad fit can be a really, really worthwhile thing to do, although you will never eliminate it. The interesting thing about that is there was a University of Westminster study carried out recently, and 71% of students felt unfulfilled by their work experience. So if you can manage to turn that around and be one of the few, then your organisation will quickly, go up in respectability from the people that you're looking to apply to join you. So we've had quite a wide range of people from different courses join our placement, and this has kind of grown as well. So to start with, we basically had people just come alongside our rangers and work doing fencing, livestock checks, maybe moth surveys, but with the opportunity building we found different variety of work that people can help with, and therefore the courses that are joining us has grown. So you can see on the board biological science, we've got conservation, animal behaviour, biodiversity and conservation, ecology and wildlife. They're all kind of obvious ones. There's wildlife photography, which was a student from Falmouth, and we've also had a couple of people from marketing and communication courses join us as well. Now that's obviously as a response to things like Facebook, blogs being more prevalent now. And the fact that our sector offers really interesting points of experience from students from those backgrounds to add things to their portfolio means that our placements can be really quite valuable to them, because they won't be doing the same thing every day in an agency. They'll be advertising something different, and those may be some of the things that we don't like to deal with, like dog attacks on sheep, littering, or it could be some really nice things like new calves being born or a rare bird being seen in the area for the first time. And that variety of stories that we have to share means that marketing and communication is a real growth area, not only for our staff, our future workforce, but also for student placements as well. So what I've tried to do over the last couple of years is think more laterally about perhaps what we don't have as skills that we can't teach, but we can learn. And these students come with placement advisors as well, so if we don't know necessarily what they're doing and how we can guide them, then they have lecturers that can support them in that as well. So in terms of depth again of offer, as I say, our offer has grown, and so have the institutes that have been sending students to us as well. So Bournemouth University is an obvious one for us. We have many students from Bournemouth University, but we've also got them from Falmouth, as I mentioned a minute ago, St Mary's, Harper Adams, Southampton, not far from us, and then we've got a couple of outliers there, so the University of Madrid in Spain and the University of Ghent in Belgium. So 3 different students have come from those universities. Absolutely fascinating to find out the different things they're learning in Europe about conservation management. Really enriching for both the team that work at Hengistbury Head, but also the other placements there as well. And I think it's really nice when you see and get to cross early learnings with what each other are doing. For example, in Belgium, obviously they're a lot hotter on pesticides than we are, and it was fascinating to see the conversations between the UK students and the Belgian students about how the policies differ in different countries. And just to explain a bit about our numbers, so roughly speaking on the reserve, it's around 164 hectares. We have a team of 3 plus me, so 4, and usually every year we have around 20 students, no more than 8 at a time generally, so they cross over with each other as the season goes on. Most of those are short-term placements, so 2 to 5 weeks, and we usually have a couple of year placements as well. And the year placements are really handy because they can obviously help mentor the shorter placements and learn, and develop supervisory skills, and spread their knowledge onto other people and learn some presentation skills as well. So that works really nicely. So as we have our students add their feedback to Rate My Placement, they get a £5 Amazon voucher every time they do, not from us, I might add, it's from Rate My Placement, which is really good and it encourages them to do it. But we've also surveyed all of our historical placements going back 6 years as well and asked them the same questions. And we found a set of results from them, which I want to share with you. So the first question was, what makes an enjoyable work placement? And there is some crossover with these answers on different questions as well, but I think that's important. So the 5 keywords we got out from the sentiment analysis were that they learnt new skills, that they just simply learned, that there was variety, that they got to use machinery, who doesn't like that, and that the staff took time to teach. We then asked how they found the placement structure. So they enjoyed the range of different tasks, and you'll see that that replicates the variety that was enjoyed in the first one. That the days were clearly planned out, that the placements felt valued, that it was structured, that they felt an achievement, and they felt involved. So they didn't feel like they were placements, they felt like part of the team. And one of the ways we do that is we give them a t-shirt with the company logo on. It says placement on the arm because I don't want the public expecting to have a rant at them about something when they're out in the field, if they can help it. So I do want them to be recognised as placements, but I also want them to feel like they're part of the organisation too, and that's been an important step, a small but important step. So then we asked how the placements felt supported. So they felt they had guidance from staff. They felt that questions were encouraged, and that is something that we end pretty much every session with. Have you any questions? And even halfway through, especially when we're doing training, are there any questions on that? And we watch for body language and see if some people are a little bit, perhaps not as comfortable as others, and then we'll, seek them out later and ask them if they're all right with everything that was explained to them. The staff were knowledgeable, and obviously your staff resource is really important. Not every team and every worker is suited to take work placements on. But they were made to feel comfortable in the team. And another key word that came up here that I haven't included is tea and biscuits. So I think that's kind of crucial as well. And that they felt happy. Then, crucially, why would they recommend our work placement? They learned, they gained experience. The work was conservation focused, and that harks back to the tea and photocopying. That it was fun, that they learned new skills, and then crucially that it was good for their careers. So you'll notice out of all of that bunch of information, not once did anybody say, because we got a brush cutter certificate, because we learned to identify plants. it was the overall structure of the entire placement that they enjoyed. And that's why I feel that this is really scalable. You don't have to have something high value in terms of dishing out chainsaw certificates. But what you can do is build on the strengths of your own workplace. With the staff knowledge that you've got, be enthusiastic, and then the students will enjoy it regardless, because you'd have found the right fit for you at interview stage. And moving on to that, this is where we're going to talk about the structure of the placement that we've offered. So it starts off with an interview. We don't accept them anymore without an interview. We often used to accept them off an email, which wasn't a great way to do things, not for them or for us. So it's often a half an hour informal chat. Obviously that can be over Skype, which is probably something we're all used to now, although my technological situation at the start of this talk probably shows otherwise. But we sit down and we ask them some very basic questions, because really we want to test their enthusiasm, and we want to test whether they have chosen a route already. If they haven't, that's okay. If they have, and it's got nothing to do with what we do, then we let them down gently and perhaps provide some signposting as to where they could go to get that experience. So, for example, we don't do a massive amount of GIS work, but we do obviously know of ecological companies locally who would perhaps be interested in taking them on. So we signpost. So it can be tough saying no to people. That's something that I've found particularly hard in the early years. But if you couple that with good feedback and a good reason why, then obviously that is of benefit to the student. It's of much more benefit than just taking them blindly and probably believing they're not going to be the best fit for you, but going with it anyway. Next would be the training, and I've popped 3 examples on there. It's certainly not limited to these 3 examples, but we have experts that come in to speak to our students. Those are local naturalists. They sometimes can be retired rangers, and they will spend often a day with them on a specific subject, or even if it's something that we teach them ourselves, if it's something key to the reserve. So on the far left here you have a natterjack toad in a pink bath sponge, as you do. So those are evening surveys that we do. The walk pattern of the natterjack toad is as individual as a human fingerprint. So we have our long-term placements licensed to handle them. Our short-term placements are not, but they can come on the survey and help us spot the natterjacks. We pop them in the toad, pop them in the sponge, take a photo of them, pop them into iSpot, and then see if they've been found elsewhere in previous years. We get an idea of age range as well. Over here we have Jim King, who's CBE. He's a retired Natural England area officer. Really lovely guy, retired but wants to keep his hand in. Excellent botanist. And what we do with Jim every year is that we identify several habitats that we want to reclassify for National Vegetation Classification, and we ask him to spend a day with the students focusing on species in those areas. Jim comes along, teaches the students, tests their ability, and often, you know, if he's happy, he will tell us which of the students he's happier with, in terms of whether they've managed to identify a few more. And then we'll work with them over the next couple of weeks doing National Vegetation Classification surveys with them. If it's very basic habitats such as heathland, we can often leave them alone to do that after obviously being confident enough that they are happy to do that. And then top right is just some plants that have been stuck. So that's basic plant identification that we can do with them, and we can do that even during brush cutting as well. You know, it's very easy to cut plants up and have a look at them. There's obviously many more training as well. So we had a kestrel poo survey that we were part of, where somebody came and taught them how to look around kestrel nests. So the students went out, collected them, and then we passed them off to be sent to the lab. We have a moth trap that's been going on the site since 1921. Moths, for anybody who does it, is a relatively easy thing to get into. There are some microbes that they struggle to identify, so student placements will identify what they can and save what they can't. And we also have a butterfly transect that's been going since 1979 as well, so they will take part in that, and often towards the end of their placement they will be taking that on their own. So performance. So this harks back to the performance zone that I mentioned earlier. So this is where we get them to test their skills out. And so several photos here. Some students carrying out brush cutting. That's in our visitor centre garden, but equally that could be on footpaths around the site. Student here, Rachel, was one of our long-term placements who was with us for a year, and then she stayed to carry out her dissertation. So what you see there is her using a Sharpie to draw on the wings of a damselfly on a mark recapture survey. Rachel had been trained to do that during her dissertation, and then she started to cascade that information to short-term placements who were helping her net the damselflies for capture release. Two students here who helped on a day at JP Morgan to try and educate the employees as to how important the environment is, and the fact that they were student placements studying environmental courses really actually resonated with the employees at JP Morgan probably a lot more than I did somehow. I don't know whether that says more about me or whether the position that they came in with, but it was their enthusiasm for the environment at such a relatively young age was a really valuable thing to see, and especially for them as well. And for one of those students, it's been a really key learning experience for them, and they are much more confident as a result of being done that. Then we've got 4 students here, a mixture of masters and undergrad. Again, it's quite a far away photo, but the boardwalk or pond dipping platform that they stood on, they built on their own effectively. It is safe. Obviously, we did test it with them. We showed them what we needed to look for, but they were shown the techniques beforehand. They were left on their own with the devices to do it after helping us to build one on the other side of the pond, and they built that. And each one of them, I know, puts that on their CV now. So that's where the performance comes in afterwards. Review. This is something I've added as an extra step. It wasn't part of my original four kind of nice step plan, but the review is something we've kind of slid in to the placement opportunity. And I've put some very formal examples on there of what an appraisal can look like. We don't carry out a full appraisal with students who are with us for 5 weeks. We will do often at the 6-month stage for 12-month placements. But we do want to meet with students halfway through to ask them if they're enjoying it, and if there's anything they feel they've been involved in that they want to spend more time in. And then we will try and adapt their last weeks of placement to make sure they get more value from it. This is also something in terms of the workforce that you have, that we already have in, people that have already started working for us. I've had appraisals in the past that have been quite unimaginative, and there have been managers I've worked for who I've sat down for an appraisal, and when we've got to the tell us what successes you've had this year, they've often asked me to fill them out myself, which I didn't feel was quite the job of the appraisal as such. I think you need to recognise your successes, but I think it's important that your manager does as well. So I've got some really nice forms now which are completely free to download off the ACAS website, and there's 2 stages to it. The first one on the left is a self-appraisal form which the candidate fills in about a week before your appraisal with them, and that links directly to the appraisal form, again another ACAS form, and that it does draw almost directly from the self-appraisal, but there are different questions on it. So the self-appraisal isn't something that the manager actually looks at. It's there to inspire the employee of things they want to talk about during it. So what training do you want? How have you felt the year's gone? What could you improve on? And how could your manager help you? And that's really helped me to focus and have much better appraisals with my staff, as well as turning my phone off during it as well, which was obviously a nasty habit to get into. So we have much more meaningful appraisals within our team, and also appraisals with the students as they go through. Then cascading. So we have, obviously we have a myriad of different students of different abilities that come through to us. Some who go into rangering, some who have gone into farm management, some who are geography teachers, some who work for Natural England, and some who have gone into other sectors entirely. But there have been ones that have come in that have done specific jobs, like Rachel with the damselfly survey, who we often invite back the next year. And even if they are doing a job at that point, we have found them taking time off to come back and teach the next generation of students how to do the skill that they picked up whilst they were on placement. So the picture on the left here was a session led by Stephanie Dobbin, who was a student with us from St Mary's. She carried out a whole foreshore survey of plant species, threatened plant species. And so she came in and did a whole day with the students, teaching them the identification of these 6 plant species, and then repeated the survey with them. And as site manager, I didn't need to go out on that at all. So that was a day that I had to catch up on paperwork and emails and all those other bits and pieces we have to do. And the entirety of the students, they went and learnt from someone else who was now working in a different sector, but who was happy to come back because of the time that we'd spent helping her at Hengistbury. The picture on the right is the students taking part in the National Vegetation Classification Survey, and again, those that have learned particularly well the year before have come back and spent time teaching methodology and identification to the students that are there that current year. And that, I think, is something, if you were to sum it up, that would be the effective loyalty on the students that we've given time to at Hengistbury, and the ability, the willingness that they have to come back and continue to contribute to their own sector, which has been really nice to see. So a rough guide to our placement. I hope this is easy to see. If not, I will speak to Amy from CJS about how we can upload this presentation if it's of any use to anybody afterwards. So this is how our placement structure works generally. There are some slight differences in it. But week 1, we would have an induction, so really important. We sit all the students down, we run them through the workplace, the health and safety procedures, we get them to sign the volunteer agreements and the induction documents. We give them an orientation, tell them where the livestock are, show them where the tool sheds are, give them keys if they need them. And then we often start with basic training, so that would be in brush cutters, hedge trimmers, livestock checking, so basic how to check livestock. They'd have a day botany training with our expert, and we do moth identification with them every morning. Week 2, they would be independent with livestock checking at that point, although once a week at least they would still be checked by a member of staff. And then they would have supervised training in brush cutting, hedge trimming, moth identification, butterfly transect and MVC surveys. So that wouldn't be them being left on their own, they would be supervised while they're doing it. So staff would watch them do something like moth identification, for example, and if they were looking like they were going to get it wrong, we'd step in and show them why they weren't quite right in that situation. Week 3, they'd be independent with the moth trap, with the butterfly transect and with MVC surveys. They'd then have supervised training with data inputting, so obviously Mavis for MVC surveys, living record for pretty much everything else, and BCMS for butterflies. So they would then be doing our data inputting. And then they'd have some more basic training, so maybe a day with a dragonfly expert, possibly bats or possibly natterjack toads. And then week 4, they would be independent with data inputting, brush cutting and hedge trimming, so they're now doing that on their own. And they would be delegating, or delegated to, so we'd find some students who really were interested in the MVC surveys and wanted to do a report on the habitat. They'd be doing social media if they were interested in that. And they'd be doing data analysis as well, which kind of goes hand in hand with the project report writing, but obviously if you've got 2 students who want to do each, then that works really well. And we'd also have them handing over to new placements too, which is quite nice for them to show those soft skills, as I said earlier. So the natural process for people in any sector getting a job really should be that they go through work experience, so 16 to 18-year-olds, testing out what they want to do before they commit to a further education or higher education course studying. That they would then undertake that formal learning with higher education or further education. They'd come for a work placement with somebody like us, or hopefully somebody like you, and then decide on the more finite ideas of where they want their career to go, whether they want to be a GIS analyst, whether they want to be an ecologist, policy maker, a geography teacher, or a ranger, or a livestock conservation grazier. And then they get their first paid role. So those 4 steps are really the most obvious ones to get. And I will add as well is that I recognise that obviously the 4-week programme I offered before seems like a lot of work. However, I will also say that obviously we are helping people understand how to do our job whilst we do our job. And I will say that during the time we've had work placements, our work hasn't suffered. I would say quite the opposite. The work is carried on and it's actually been added to, not only in terms of quality and the amount of work we're able to do, but also the range. Things like the surveys and the report writing is increased. So I think when I first looked at it, I was worried about the students taking time away from us, and actually it's been quite the opposite. I think because we've structured it right, we now carry out our work and we're able to do so probably much better. So the benefits of offering work placements and experience to the staff. We've covered it for the students. So for the staff, it's being able to develop supervisory skills. So some of our assistant rangers, for example, this is how they develop those skills. Doesn't cost any money. It's good branding and marketing for your organisation. Any work done with young people to help upskill nowadays is obviously good PR, as much as it is of good benefit to people. You know, our sector is full of absolute superheroes who are expected to do a lot of different work, and people can come for work experience with us and they may not want to do what we do, but they may take an element of it and go off and do that instead, like social media. If you're trying to outreach to a younger market, it's a crucial thing. You know, if we've got young people around and I'm trying to use social media, I mean, I'm 40 now, I hate to admit it, but if I want to reach that younger audience, who are often the ones we miss out on, I've got the perfect testing audience to carry it out before I start putting it out. And I'll ask them often, how should we put this out? Would you read this? What platforms do you use? It's a great recruitment strategy. 50% of the jobs we've given in the last 4 years have gone to previous work placements. And the 50% is important because we still do give a good crack of the whip to those who we don't know. And for those 50% of jobs we haven't given to former work placements have been at those interviews. They've done great jobs, but they weren't the best person there at the time, so they didn't get it. But for those other ones, they were. We knew a bit more about them, and that really helped us. The experience helps young people to mature as well, so it aids them. Slightly different matter, but considering the same thing. Just reading through job specifications, it's a passion of mine. You know, partly as somebody who does get involved in careers advice, is that when we ask for experience and high qualifications, we might be shutting people out. And my analogy is rocking horses and unicorns. So when we ask for people with qualifications and experience, what we might get are rocking horses who have qualifications and experience, look committed on paper, but may lack some of the soft skills that are really important and kind of crucial for our role, like enthusiasm, like the ability to talk confidently in front of groups. We also might get unicorns who are magical and elusive, but they do exist, and they do have the experience and qualifications that we need. But there is a whole range of people in the middle who are horses, and they could be thoroughbred horses who can win races for us all day, who may not have the experience, who may not have the qualifications. They may have one or the other. But with a little bit of work and care, we may be able to get the best out of them. And there's a reason why some of those people might not have qualifications and experience as well. Which brings me on to this quote, which was a study done by Southby and South about barriers to volunteering. Bearing in mind, one of the key routes for people to get experience before they get into our sector is often volunteering. University lecturers will push university students towards volunteering. In some respects, that's much better because students have a fair amount of time in their timetable. They are somewhat financially supported, although that is through loans, but they do have time to go and do it. When we ask for people to volunteer in almost full-time roles after university, then that's when we might be putting barriers up. And I do like this quote. I don't know if you can read it, so I'm going to read it out. While volunteering is a mechanism for individuals to boost their personal, social, financial and cultural resources in order to overcome exclusion, volunteering also consumes one's resources. This means that those with less personal and social resources are less able to volunteer and gain the associated benefits. So I think probably I've been there in the past as a professional, and I've probably said to people, well, I had to volunteer, I don't see a problem with it. And actually, I've come to understand that there is a problem with it. Not everybody can volunteer. As much as we may want to believe that sometimes they can't. And obviously, there is a disparity between those who suffer from poverty. And the statistics are that 46% of people living in families where Black, African, Caribbean and Black British people were the household heads. 46% of people who are living in those situations are in poverty, whereas roughly 1 in 5 or 90% of people with a white head of household is in poverty. So it's quite a difference. 46% of BAME people in poverty, 19% of white. And so there is a very obvious barrier there that perhaps volunteering and experience can, put up to people. So offering placements and work experience can obviously help to reduce those barriers, even though they may seem a drain on our time. But if we have the way to structure it, then it's a way that we can perhaps start to overcome that. I want to quickly talk about our remote placement scheme as well, because obviously this year has been very unusual for all of us, I'm sure, in many ways. And we weren't able to offer placements in the summer as we usually were. So we took some time to think about it, and on the 14th of December, so just around 2 weeks, we are offering a remote placement scheme. We weren't sure how it was going to be taken up, so it was a bit of a gamble, but we had speakers come from the careers sector. We have the Director of Membership for the CIPD there, who is one of the leading voices on employment and HR and career development advice in the UK. We have engagement professionals, conservation professionals, grazing professionals, rewilding professionals and technology and monitoring professionals, all of whom are giving up their time, because that's the kind of sector that we are, to help teach students. And we were overwhelmed by the response that we got. And I'll flag a map up now. You probably may or may not be able to read the labels on there. But we ended up with 81 applications from that. And a lot of those are video applications as well, with some very brave people who put their application on a video and sent it to us, which was really nice to see. We have a lot of different universities, over 21 universities attending that. A lot of people from BAME backgrounds, and also there's at least one person who's a wheelchair user as well, who obviously wouldn't be able to attend a traditional in-person placement as easily. So it just shows the flexibility that such a virtual scheme has for that. And for us, obviously, it exposes BCP Council, who I work for, as somebody who does embrace development for people, and that's become really important when we interview. We've started to get people asking what the culture of our organisation is, and it's really nice to see people competing for jobs and not or us competing for people and not people competing for us, so that we are almost having to prove ourselves to the best candidates, which is really healthy, and it's how other sectors work. And I can easily point to our culture as one that supports people, and with schemes like this it's a really easy thing to do, and we've got some really good candidates over the last couple of years, and I think a lot of that's to do with how we develop young people. I want to talk about just quickly the resources that might be available to young people now. Obviously mental health is something that's increasing probably worldwide. And there's obviously a nasty part of our sector that we are striving to save the environment every day, whilst reading simultaneously in the news that obviously it's getting worse and worse and worse. Obviously there's some working conditions, not just in the UK but worldwide, of people either having to volunteer, people not being paid very much, people having to pay to work. And there is some support out there. So if you work with young people or you take placements on, there are some websites that I really think it's worth going to. Lonely Conservationists, who is run by an Australian author called Jessie Panizzolo, who also has an amazing podcast and book called How to Conserve Conservationists. It's from her own experience, but the website has a blog offering from about 100 different people that have submitted on their experiences in conservation and their own mental health. A Focus on Nature, it's a UK organisation run by volunteers who are in the sector, and it provides resources much in the same way that Countryside Job Service does. A Focus on Nature also has a mentoring scheme, which is really great, linking young people to mentors. And then as a plug for a personal project, myself and a colleague, Molly, are going to start producing a podcast called The Hive for conservation professionals, coming out in January. We speak to some amazing people around the world, like Jessie, A Focus on Nature, and there's a guy in the Joshua Tree who we spoke to, who had to put up with lots of damage caused to his site during the government shutdown, and how he dealt with that, and parallels about how we can learn from that in this country. So there's a lot of really interesting resources popping up, and honourable mentions to Wild Hub, There's a really good communications toolkit on Wild Hub for those of us who struggle to put out on social media or blogs. And Conservation Optimism as well, which brings together a whole host of fascinating organisations. And I think with that, I'm about 2 minutes from finishing, which, given that I started a bit late, is remarkable, really. There is probably a bit of a lag on here, so I'm going to sit here still-faced while I wait for any questions. But thank you very much for listening. So, Kat, are most of the placements over the summer? Yes, I would say so. Around the 20 various people that we have, most of them would come between June and September, I would say, so when universities break up. There's a little bit of some outliers around that, so the year placements that we have that often start in September and run through to around April. And we also have, when we take master students, they often come for a day a week. So they will come mostly during the winter, but obviously that will span over towards the summertime as well. But we will often look at the individual and see if we can suit them, because obviously our roles, while they can be quite varied, in the winter often that isn't the case. And although we still will be doing social media, obviously there's very little monitoring that can be done, and so it's reduced to mostly practical stuff. And we, as much as we would like the help, we don't want people who are going to get bored and grumpy. So if somebody wants to come along and says, I want to be a ranger, that's exactly what I want to do, then they will come and join us over the winter. But yeah, mostly over the summer. You're welcome. If there's any more questions, I'll wait for a bit longer. But if anybody wants to get in contact with me at all, I'm more than happy for you to contact me either on Facebook. LinkedIn is obviously a place we share a lot as well, so over on LinkedIn would be fine. If you wanted to do that, I'm more than happy to advise on any of the placement stuff that we've done. So, good question, Amy. Was this something that was easy to get the council to agree to? I would say that we're probably quite lucky in the sense that we are, the council is massive, and it's got bigger as well, and it's probably likely to get smaller again due to financial situations. But we are quite far removed from the town hall, and we're rather a satellite site, so we didn't actually ask for permission, to be honest. Although it's something they have embraced. It wasn't something we gave them the opportunity to say no to. We just started accepting people on, really. But I think now that we have the review on Rate My Placement, because the Rate My Placement thing was a really handy thing for us to do, and what we did, it would have been very easy for me to put that down as a Hengistbury Head scheme, and we decided that politically it would be much better for us to have that as a BCP Council scheme, although all the reviews on there are for us at Hengistbury. Because we thought if we can raise the profile of BCP Council, then obviously that's a really good thing that our very small team has delivered on behalf of a massive organisation. And so because we have that hallmark now, 31st in the UK ahead of Tesco and all the others is a really good thing to be able to drop into meetings with management. And it, we bring a lot no matter what team we're in. Countryside Rangers will always bring a lot to any organisation because we're so versatile. But this is just another string that we've added to our bow, and also to the council's bow as well. And so there's now a wider recognition of the benefit of placements. And I would say that other teams in the local authority are now looking at taking more on as a result. You're welcome, and thanks for the picture of me you posted as well. Okay, that might be it for questions. As I said, I'm more than happy to answer any that anybody has over LinkedIn, over Facebook, whatever suits you, or contact CGS directly, and they'll probably give you my email address, which is absolutely fine. I hope you've enjoyed watching. If you wanted to find a link on Rate My Placement, then you could see the reviews up there. You could see how easy it is for you to get students to review your own organisation as well. But yeah, I just want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. I hope you're safe over the next period, and I hope your sites are nice and quiet. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.